So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Guy Letts of Customer Sure. Hi, Guy.
Hello.
So, Guy, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, well, I'll keep me short because that's very boring. I've worked in the software industry for 30 years. I was fortunate, though, actually to start in working with a company called Logica, where I didn't realize it at the time, but it was actually a leader in customer service, customer experience. We never used any terms like that at the time.
Right.
But I guess it gave me the benefit that there was just an expectation in the company and amongst colleagues that you would always do your best for the customer. You would always deliver on your promises. You'd always return calls promptly. If you gave a price for a project and a time scale, you'd move heaven and earth to deliver at that price by that time. And although, terms like customer experience and customer service, they weren't really commonplace at the time, but it was just the expectation amongst peers and colleagues that was how things worked there.
Right.
And I suppose those standards were achieved because it was peer pressure and expectation amongst anything. And it's like going into John Lewis or dealing with Amazon nowadays. That's the expectation is that's what that company does.
Right.
But not every company's like that. And obviously there's a lot more people talking about those terms now.
Yeah.
So my background 30 years ago in the software industry, I've worked for large companies and now a very small one in comparison ever since.
So tell us about Customer Sure and what you're up to and your plans for world domination.
That would be nice, certainly for us, hopefully for our customers as well. The way the company was founded is that my starting in software engineering delivery products ended up running a more commercial function where I was responsible for customer services and services revenue.
Right.
And in the course of that job, I went through a process that I think is common to probably very many people, which is that you're trying to do the best for customers. You make that link in your head. Not everybody does, but many people do. You make that link in your head that if we deliver great service, our business will be more successful as a result.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just wired up that way. They want to do the best pride in the job and because that's how they're made and their outlook, but they also know that that's how they want to run their business, and they want a great reputation. They want to do well because they deserve to do well and because they earn customers. Not everybody thinks like that, but that's how I approached customer service in my role. And it was a very hard-nosed lessons learned, really, that we had a revenue leakage problem. We were losing about 10% of revenue year on year, as it turned out.
Right.
And yet I had a 10% growth target.
Right.
So not only did I have to find 10% to grow the business, I also had to find another 10% to replace the business that was leaking away. And I guess it was the lessons I learned around dealing with that attrition that prompted me to have an idea for some software tool, customer feedback software tool, based on the specific lessons I learned that I thought would be useful for companies everywhere, not just the one where I was getting the benefits.
Okay. Now, because we were talking a little bit recently, and we were talking about reviews and feedback and that whole sort of process, but you also made a comment around the limits. You made a comment around how many people are looking for reviews, and that's the way that you gather sort of trust with your customers, but it's a very much an external sort of facing sort of process in many ways. But then you also made a comment about the limits of reviews as a feedback process. And I thought, that's interesting. And then he went on to explain a bit more about that. But for the benefit of our listeners and readers and things, can you explain to me about some of your thoughts around that sort of topic?
Yeah, I think it feels like reviews and feedback are well-established and mature areas of business, but I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
I think reviews are although they're everywhere and it feels like we're constantly being bombarded to fill in surveys, I think they're actually at a very young stage of development, and the way in which customers experience these things is not great, and the benefits actually that businesses unlock for them. It has benefits, but I think you can unlock. I think there's a way to unlock a great deal more benefits. So, for example, I think reviews have a specific limitation because people associate them. Typically, they're driven by the marketing or the sales function of a business, and there's no question about it. Strong evidence that done reasonably well, reviews can improve sales, no question.
Right.
For customer feedback, I would be the first to say, being in that business, that it delivers concrete business benefits. But how badly is the customer experience of most feedback? I stayed in a budget hotel, and the next day, after 7 hours in a room, I got 53 pages of questions from this mainstream company. Just ridiculous to expect anybody to do that. I rewrote the questionnaire in 5 questions, and so I think these things are done, and they're done, and there are business benefits. But I think they could be done a lot better and deliver a lot more business benefit as a result.
Right. I mean, and so is it that you talk about 53 pages? I mean, that's horrific. But and you talk about writing it down to, or reducing it down to sort of 5 key kind of questions. I mean, is that the key? Is the key to make things shorter and simpler?
Shorter and simpler, I guess, is my shorthand for saying do something where you're trying to make it beneficial for the customer, rather than saying what business benefits do we want from feedback.
Right.
Which sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Say I'm going to do a project, but I'm not going to drive it from what the business benefits are. But of course, if you flip it round, and that's our whole approach to customer feedback, is flipping it round,
right,
and try and make it in the customer's best rather than the business interest. But of course, if you do that and make your customers more happy as a result, then the business benefits, of course, accrue with interest.
Right.
So you do get it is ultimately for business benefits, but you get greater benefits, I believe, or I experience, by approaching the whole process by trying to make feedback something that benefits the customer, rather than setting them an exam with lots of questions or something time consuming or so on. So I guess our approach to it is different insofar as we say, well, how can you make feedback something that the customer enjoys and finds useful, rather than saying, what are all the things as a business that we want to know from our customers? And they're subtly different.
Right. Okay. I mean, there is, the subtlety is very, very fine. I mean, can you give me some examples about how that would work in practice?
Yeah, well, can be related to the length. So if you start from the point of view of saying, right, customer feedback's a good thing, we all know it's a good thing, but he says so, and we've some experience of doing it. So, right, let's do more. Let's roll it out across the business. Right, what do we want to know? Well, we want to know where our customers come from. We want to know what would make them buy more. We want to know what we can do to our products to make them better and sell more, or reduce the cost of them. And before long, once you've done that exercise across the business, you end up with a whole load of questions. But all those questions are company oriented rather than customer oriented.
Right.
And then if you do the traditional thing of give them to a market researcher, no criticism of market researchers, they're very skilled and do a great job. But if you approach it as a market research exercise, you tend to find the questions get longer. They're looking for questions that are not leading or biased in any way. Well, actually, when you're looking at satisfaction and what the customer wants, those things are less important. So if you can say, by contrast, right, well, how can we make feedback work for the customer? Well, as a customer, and we're all customers in one way or another, what do I want? Well, actually, I want the company to be perfect from my perspective. So I want them to be easy to do business with. I want them to not do things that annoy me, and I want them to get it right every time, or for it to be very easy to fix when something goes wrong.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, what feedback means is typically after you've done something as a company, after you've done something for a customer, whether it's deliver a product or deliver a service, just make it easy for them to tell you whether it went well or badly.
Right.
Now they might say, "I'm busy. I don't want to fill you in." Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's customer oriented. That's fine. So, radically, I would say don't send reminders. We're not interested in high response rates here. Obviously, we want actionable feedback. We want plenty of it.
Yeah.
But what should drive this process is not the stats and the response rates. As long as you do everything to make it easy for the customer to respond.
Right.
And there's a few factors you can that you need to do before you can claim that. If once you've made it easy, if they then don't reply, well, fine, they're probably okay. You're probably doing a good job. You've made it easy. You've invited feedback. If they don't want to give it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Is it
that you just what you're saying is you're focusing on the quality of the feedback rather than the quantity?
The quality, yeah, and the relevance and importance to the customer. So what we observe as we help our customers to do feedback this way, what we observe is it does tend to polarize the feedback into the very positives. Mm-hmm. And those are by far the majority of cases for the people who are seeking to do the feedback in the way we've described it. Mm-hmm. They're generally customers who are already, or companies who are already doing a great job and want to be even better. Mm-hmm. So by definition, they tend to get a lot of feedback, which is good for morale and which they can choose to use as reviews by displaying it on their website if they want. Mm. But they do also get surprises, and those are the ones where it means it's an opportunity for them to save a customer. But they always look at it. It's a terrible feeling when you get bad feedback coming in. It's a horrible feeling emotionally. Sure. But rationally, you kind of get over that immediate disappointment and say, well, hang on, I've just found out how to save a customer and how to keep a sale or keep some loyalty. Okay. And in hindsight, you think, well, I'm glad I knew, because the alternative was probably that we were going to lose them.
Right. And does it mean that when you get the feedback from the customers, because you're doing it in a way that makes sense for them, do you then have to translate that back into operational relevance for the business?
I guess this is another difference where often feedback goes to an analyst or a researcher or is collected by somebody in marketing, perhaps. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but in terms of the customer experience, if they've taken that opportunity where the company has invited contact and they've used that channel of communication to say, well, actually, this thing went wrong.
Right.
That feedback in that case is going to somebody who's not equipped to fix it or deal with it, and who may or may not forward it to somebody who, and you're adding time and you're adding. So typically I see feedback collected and very often not even read by anybody, very often not actioned by anybody, but it may be aggregated and put in a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet just to drive a number somewhere or key themes of customer feedback. Okay. But the poor person, a customer who's invested the time to give that feedback and may well be sitting there with a live problem that nobody's attending to, feels like they're given feedback and that they've been completely ignored. Right. So we say, deliver the feedback not to researchers and analysts, certainly not in the first test, deliver it to the operational teams who are able to triage it, if you like, and say, hang on, there's a serious problem here, let's go into service recovery mode, phone up, apologise, sort it out, and immediately you've blown the socks off a customer because that's not their usual experience of giving feedback. And actually they get feedback fatigue, because if you give feedback and nothing happens a few times, you start to think, well, why should I bother?
Okay, so you're literally kind of putting the feedback into the hands of the operational sort of team, so they almost could use it as an early kind of warning sort of, or a warning sort of system as well.
Exactly that, and from the customer's perspective, remember we always flip it round and saying how does this benefit the customer?
Yeah.
Well, you getting analysis or conclusions or investment decisions or service improvement initiatives for your business, that doesn't give an immediate benefit, possibly even any benefit to the customer. So deliver it to the operational team. They can fix the immediate problem. By all means, then do a secondary analysis of it. But I think we see it do it in that most companies send it to the analysts, and if there's a problem, it may make it through to somebody who's going to do service recovery. We say send it to the operational team first, and then do all the analysis you like afterwards when it's no longer time critical.
Well, it also helps you kind of prioritize putting out the fires, as it were.
Yeah, and it does actually mean, remember the starting point for all this was I learnt about this better way of doing feedback because I was trying to hit a revenue number.
Yes. Yeah.
And the only way you save customers is not by aggregating feedback and prioritizing service and process improvements and doing the top three, as many companies do, and put it in next year's business plan. That those, by all means, do that. Of course, those are good things to do, but you haven't saved a single customer doing that way, because customers are not dealt with on average. They're dealt with by that person's issue or problem at that moment on that day, and it will be different from the next customer and the next customer, but it's exactly how you win them in the first place. When you're selling to somebody, you don't say, well, on average customers buy for these reasons, therefore you should buy it for this reason. What do? If you've got a list of prospects, you go down and you look at their needs and you look at their specific requirements and you sell to them individually. Well, it shouldn't, but it seems to be like it is. It shouldn't be revolutionary to say, well, actually, you keep customers the same way you win them in the first place.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
One by one, and treat them as individuals.
Excellent. So, I mean, how would a company many companies, I've seen companies that they'll start to do like things like this, the feedback process, which is a bit more operational, but then also a review kind of process, gathering a review process. And you alluded to it before around customers getting sort of feedback and review fatigue. I mean, how should firms sort of prioritize, do you think, in your opinion, sort of what the searching for reviews kind of first, or actually trying to the feedback way first? Or is that a bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing?
I think they're related. I don't see them as separate things, actually. I think they are separate at the minute. So sometimes people do feedback and it's run in one. It's often depends which part of the business is leading the initiative. So reviews tend to be led by sales and marketing, and feedback tends to be led by customer service teams and people like that. But for me, they're two sides of the same coin. How I see them combining is that if you get feedback and display it on your website,
yes,
that is a review, but effectively you're just being transparent about what you're like to do business with. So I'm not saying display all the nitty gritty. So the way we've achieved that with our software is that you can ask a number of questions, and you could say one question might be, please write a sentence to as a review for our website to help other customers understand what we like to do business with, or give an overall impression, that kind of thing. So one general question. And another question might be, what specifically could we do to improve your experience of dealing with this? Now, we would say, we think it's completely legitimate to say, show the answers to the first question, because that's the customer's balanced view of what you're like as a supplier. Keep the answers to the second question private, because that's something that may or may not have gone right on that particular occasion. You may have forgotten to return the call, or something specific may have gone, but it's not their balanced view of you as a supplier. They may be more than happy there's just something gone wrong on that day. So we say it's completely legitimate to keep those two streams of feedback separately, display the first one, the overall assessment on your website as this is what we like to do business with, this is what our customers say about us. And the second one is, if you like, the actionable, specific, any service recovery requirements or anything they've done particularly well. Actually, is more often the case.
Right.
But what we don't let people do is cherry pick individual answers. So you can't just display all the good comments in any one of those streams.
Right. Okay. So, Guy, I mean, so this is I mean, I know you're kind of like your products and the service and stuff, and it is it is very much driven from your own experience about what works and what doesn't kind of work. I mean, is there anything else that we haven't sort of talked about, and we haven't talked about the software, in specifics, because it does what you say it's going to do in that sort of in that area. But is there anything that you think that we haven't talked about that you think it's worth sharing with our readers and listeners?
I suppose a couple of examples might be helpful just to ground it all. Obviously, my personal experience, but just successes we've seen from some of the companies who've latched on to taking this approach.
Okay.
We had one example. There's a case study on our website, so it's not betraying any confidences. The retail arms of the Royal Institute of British Architect, they sell publications and software and different bits of their business they sell online.
Yeah.
Well, one sales team implemented customer feedback, and it was so successful that another sales team demanded they get a system as well, because the first team had exceeded target and had a bumper year. So it was kind of infectious in that business, and we're busy now rolling out to a third area of the business.
Right.
So can you put a specific ROI to 2 decimal places on customer feedback? That is a really hard thing to do, but some people just know instinctively, and those guys know because of the bottom line that better service improves better sales.
Yeah.
Better service means better sales.
Right. Okay.
So that's just one. There are other examples I could give that illustrate the same principle. But for anybody who doubts the fact that feedback delivers value to a business, our experience is that without question and in ways that you don't know until you start asking customers.
Okay.
So I guess the revolutionary thing not revolutionary, but the way that can give us confidence and be quite relaxed about our terms of doing business. We say to customers, you can stop using our service anytime with no more to pay, because we know that once they start getting feedback, they will want to carry on.
Right.
And actually, if their circumstances change, as a principle, we want to be one of those companies that's great to deal with and doesn't lock you in or tie you in.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that if we help get you good quality, actionable feedback from your customers, we don't know exactly what they're going to tell you, but we do know that you'll get value out of it and that you'll learn and that it will help your business. So yeah, that's just been our consistent experience now with hundreds of customers around the world.
Excellent, that's great news. So, Guy, that brings me to my final question, and it's the one I always ask everybody that I speak to on the podcast, and it's this: is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Thank you very much. I would like to shamelessly plug anybody to take getting feedback for their business seriously. And if you use our product because it's the right one for you, fabulous. Customer Sure, as I say, is in use by hundreds of customers around the world. We do a great job for them. We're very proud of our own personal satisfaction ratings. It's important to us. We couldn't really hold our heads high unless we did take service and quality seriously. But I would say the value of customer feedback as a way of improving business is unquestionably, in my 30 years in business, the single most effective way of improving the financial performance of a business. And please take a look at our software, Customer Sure. It is good. If it's for you, great. But we'll always help you decide. We'll always be honest. And if something else would suit your circumstances better, we'll do our best to point you in the right direction.
Guy, thank you for being so magnanimous. I think that's a great virtue, let's say. And I just want to say thank you for your time and sharing your insights today. That's been excellent, and I'll make sure that gets all edited and written up and linked up and things, and we'll give Customer Sure a big shout out.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Adrian. Always good to talk with like-minded people.
Fantastic.
Great stuff. Thanks, Adrian.